Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the third installment of Up for Discussions, where we give you guys an update on what we've been working on Discussions, as well as cover some of the stories you might have missed on Discusions.app. Today, we have Paul and Brian joining us.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
We're going to be doing a bit of an update on the project with regards to the current market conditions, and then after that, we're going to take a small break, and we'll come back with a special guest to talk about some of the contents on Discusions.app. Yes, so we're all well and good. The coronavirus have not taken us just yet. We are feeling okay. So the project has been steady despite the market conditions. We've been working on our staking, which will be coming once again. Will start on March 18th, and the details of the staking process and how much you get for your stake will be in the first link in the description below. So you can go check that out. But today we want to cover more specifically on how the team is reacting to this recent crisis in terms of our personal safety and how we are, we mostly, all team members are working from home. We are a remote team after all. So, working from home is not a huge step for us. So we're all physically safe, but also in terms of the financial well-being and the progress of the project. So I'm going to let Brian and Paul take over a little bit to talk about that.
Yeah,
so everybody is...
Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm sure watching the crypto crash, and obviously with the broader market crash that it's mirrored. Disappointed that cryptocurrency didn't provide the hedge that they were hoping for. I'm sure there's lots of reasons and theories people have about that, but the reality is we have we're a crypto project, so the crypto price, we're sensitive to the crypto prices. In terms of the funding situation, I think that's something that we want to be pretty upfront with everyone. The prices are a concern, but at this point, we feel that we're adequately funded to continue our pace of development for the near future, and certainly get through some of the development goals that we've discussed on kind of our broader timeline and our roadmap that we've put into the public space. So we have some immediate goals that we hope to accomplish by the end of this month, and then we have some broader goals 6 months out that we're still feeling pretty confident about. So I guess the point is, despite this downturn, which obviously puts a strain on things, we're still feeling pretty good about our short-term development goals. And to reiterate, our primary focus is to make sure that our partners have the tools and the enhancements to Discussions and some of the other kind of ancillary development projects that we're working on, so that they can help build their projects and use Discussions in a way that we're hoping projects will find useful, which is to build community, and all that goes towards our goal of achieving revenue growth. So at this point, Discussions is gone from zero revenue to a very small amount of revenue, and we'd like to keep that trend going, where we bring on more partners and we have more investment from those partners, where they're building more of their community on our platform, and that's helping contribute some revenue to the project. So from that standpoint, I feel like that's going to be the focus, and part of that is with partners, and part of that is just getting more natural exposure to the platform in general, from the general public, general crypto public, and the general sort of special interest public, people who are interested in freedom of speech, people who are interested in decentralized platforms, things like that. So an ask to the community would be posting content to Discussions, sharing links on Discussions, and then sharing the Discussions post, more broadly, is going to help drive traffic. So, I mean, if you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, and instead of posting a link directly to a story, you can post it onto Discussions, which helps put more content on Discussions, and then post the Discussions link, to those other places, which helps get Discussions out there. And there's conversations happening on Discussions, there's tipping happening, there's stuff going on. So, I mean, I think a good idea would be, if there's stuff you're noticing in your community that you just want to put your thoughts down on paper in a place, or on the blockchain, stuff about how coronavirus is affecting you, or how your community is responding, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. I think Discussions is a great platform for it, and it's a good way to share it around. So we will get benefit from having the platform out there. So I'd encourage people to get involved, and to definitely think about Discussions as a place to post your thoughts.
Okay. Ryan, do you have anything to add to
that? Not regarding Discussions itself, but I just want to say the Novosphere team is still very optimistic about the project, and a lot of us have reduced our pay in, say, US dollars and have increased our Atmos token holdings.
Yeah.
And we feel this is great for the project and for the financials of the project.
Yeah.
The main thing is we're very optimistic. We do see a bright future ahead of Discussions and Novosphere. And us taking more Atmos tokens just reduces the strain on the financials so that we could pay our developers to further the project.
So yeah, as Brian, brought up, the whole team is ready to buckle down. We haven't been buckling down for like the bear market before, right? This is not the worst we experienced. So we have plans in place for these specific kind of situations. So in terms of the recent market crash, obviously it's not the most happy news, but at the same time we're not panicking. We are forging ahead with development. We are going to deliver those development goals as Paul mentioned, and yeah, we're ready to buckle down and get things done.
Everything's still on schedule as far as I know.
Exactly. So I just want to add to that obviously being in the cryptocurrency space, things happen, and just in general, like as an organization. So we just want to make clear that the funds that are funding the project, the account that's funding the project, is a multi-sig account. Let's say, God forbid, the coronavirus got caught up to one of us. The funds will still be safe. We have a roadmap in place, and we have internal communication, and we're well connected with every aspect of the project, so that if someone does unfortunately have to take some time out, the project will continue to function. So on that part, we are solid as well. I also want to add that even though this coronavirus and market crash can be seen as a detriment and a setback to the project, at the same time it could be a great opportunity. We are seeing a lot of coronavirus content being posted on Discusions.app, and this is due to the fact that Reddit's actually been cracking down quite a bit on communities that are discussing coronavirus. Whether that is for good or bad, that's up to you to decide, right? That's why we have that delegated moderation system in place. But we see an opportunity to kind of build that audience and give that community that wants to talk about the topic more freely the ability to do so. And we also we're thinking internally what we could do for to advance the cause. Not we're not going to develop any vaccines, but we can at least bring awareness to different initiatives and participate initiatives like hashtag stay the fuck home, or things like that are trending on social media. Yeah, we could do something. We're not powerless as well. And I'm talking to our partners, and they are looking at different ways they could contribute to making this process of combating the virus a little bit more, better. I guess is the word I could come up with. So yeah, this is even though this is a tough time, this is also could be a time where we actually bring together the community and really use that to build something amazing. So with that, we're gonna take a small break. We are gonna have a special guest joining us later today. His name is Jimmy, and he's been posting content on Discusions.app, and I'll be having him on to talk about some of those contents, as well as other content that he didn't wrote that were posted by you guys as well. And welcome back to Up for Discussions. Today we have a very special guest with us. He is Jimmy. So he is a philosopher, historian, ethnicist, permaculturalist, educator, blockchain enthusiast, and presently involved with UpliftNation.io, Tribe.one, and to a small extent, various other projects within the EOS space. He began writing blockchain-based articles around the beginning of 2018 on different projects within the space. So welcome onto the show, Jimmy.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we're gonna get started with the first article, and that is EOS Nation and Attic Labs have proposed a new worker proposal system to fund network projects. So what it is EOS originally meant was designed with a worker proposal system in mind, that was funded was supposed to be funded by inflation. However, just a few weeks ago, we burned the 4% that's been accumulating in savings in the EOS savings account, and that was pretty much what I thought, like we would never have a worker proposal system. So it was very interesting when EOS Nation and Adela came out with this, and they say instead of using inflation to fund it, we got to use the system fees to fund it. So Jimmy, do you want to get into how that whole thing might work?
Yeah, so you know, kind of similar to you, is like it's a bit of a problem how to fund these things, right?
Yeah.
And when the token burn came out, I was actually talking to Ryan Betham a little bit from Chintai, and we were talking about governance and stuff like that. And then a couple weeks later, well, I guess last week, EOS Nation rolled out their proposal, and you know, I think it's quite interesting the way that it's rolled out, and it's quite well done. And of course, there is this idea that the EOS system needs to be able to, you know, EOS is a great blockchain and Block One is doing a great job, but if there's no funding for projects, then it becomes a little bit of an issue. So their idea was to, because actually their proposal was a little bit confusing, and I actually got confused. I posted the article on Discusions.app, and you actually called me out on it because you said, you know, that's a really long time to be able to fund the proposal. But with their proposal, they were using kind of a testnet scenario just to make sure that it worked. And it looks like it would be about 12 years that this would be able to fund. And they've got quite some interesting things built into it in order to kind of protect the system from, you know, being gamed. I mean, which is a really big problem in cryptocurrencies.
Yeah,
so.
Brendan Bloomer just came out yesterday raising his concerns. I think we both, I posted your article on Reddit, someone commented like, wow, this is great. And then he mentioned that this could be used to fund some of the projects within the space, including like DApp and other, you know, token projects. And at that point, I'm like, well, I'm not so sure about that, because again, these projects are great, but should they really be funded with the ecosystem fund, if you will?
I think that's a really big issue, right? Because even beyond the EOS space, right, you have all these projects, and you know, if any network isn't really usable, then what are you going to do with it, right? And we've been in, you know, a massive bear market even before all this coronavirus stuff started. But you know, we've been in a massive bear market for a while, and in the crypto space or the EOS space or any project really, it's quite small. So when you're having to worry about who's using the network and what they're using it for, then I think it becomes a bit of an issue, right? So that's the thing, right? Like, where do projects get their funding from? I mean, it becomes quite difficult after a while if you cannot reach out in traditional ways to be able to get funding, right? Like, most funding, I think, is internal, and there was the 2017 kind of ICO mania that went around, and, you know, are these funding processes that were built into that system compliant? Obviously they're not. You know, we like to be decentralized in this space, but I mean, if you're decentralized and you get shut down, then that's not really necessarily the way to move forward, especially if you're looking towards mass adoption, right? So, and I did actually see that Brendan Blummer tweet as well, and it was yeah, well, that's a whole nother issue, I think, but sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Getting funding is definitely difficult, but at the same time, I personally think this is a great idea. However, like Brendan, you know, mentioned, is very easy. Not even just like maybe people. It's not even the fact that some people might play favors or politics or, you know, there's corruption involved. It's just that when you decide to fund a certain project and you don't decide to fund a certain one, like, that's going to get very controversial. So I think as a matter, like, for sure, things like scatter should be funded, like, without a question, right? You need a way for people to interact with the blockchain. But what about if you get into deeper other projects like Stap or even Discusions.app? We think we're providing a huge value to the community, but, you know, does it make sense for us to get funding from the community? And because we have our own token, is that using community funds to kind of just pump our bags? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I thought, like, there's a couple things within the EOS New York proposal that I think are quite interesting. The first thing is that unlike using the tokens that were burned, it kind of seems like the proposal, if the proposal goes through, right, it kind of seems like it could die at any time, right? Like, if the block producers, the acting block producers, don't vote to move the funds for the next 30-day cycle, then well, I honestly, I don't know what happens, but it kind of seems like it's going to die. Like, maybe they could bring it back and move it a month later, or you know, 2 months later. But it kind of seems to me like it would die, right? So that's one thing I like about it. But at the same time, you know, what if you get just one period where they decide not to move it. Is it over? Is it done? And then what takes off after that, right? And I do agree with you. I think that like funding something like Scatter or these big, you know, kind of security or onboarding kind of portals is definitely necessary, right? But like you say, I've been thinking about this as well. Like when you're funding a social platform, right? Or, you know, a gaming platform or something like that, it might actually come down to who you know, right? And I think it was Colin Talks Crypto, kind of, maybe, I could be quoting this wrong, but I think it was him that kind of, somebody brought up Colin Talks Crypto, right? And if you're running a proxy and you have the ear of all of these BPs, right? Then that might actually be good. But again, what about these projects that are running on the network that don't have their ear, right? Like, how do they get funded in the first place? And is it fair to, you know, fund projects based off of just kind of their marketing towards these BPs, right? Like, I'm a big believer in blockchain politics in terms of like governance and voting. Like, I honestly believe that governments around the world should be, you know, run on blockchains, whereby it can be, because, you know, I pay for Christmas lights in July in my city. So it's kind of like, I don't mind paying for roads. I don't mind paying, like, you know, I know we're supposed to be anti-tax here, right? But I don't mind paying for roads. I don't mind paying for education and things like that. But I think to a certain extent, I should be able to allocate my funds where they want to go, right? And so when I was thinking about this kind of WPS system, you know, in a free market economy, you can fund different projects by, you know, buying their tokens. People could purchase the Atmos token, and that lets the project, you know, continue to be prosperous, right? It's the same thing as in traditional markets. You buy some kind of equity in the company, right? Yeah. But with the workable proposal system, you've got, you know, a delegated group of, you know, individuals who are deciding one way or the other which to go and how much money to give. And me personally, I think you brought up a really good point, and it would be nice to see projects like Scatter that are so, you know, ingrained within what EOS has become get separate funding. But this was the thing that came up with kind of Brendan Blummer's tweet. I'll pull it up. I have it here somewhere. This is the thing that came up with him, is he was saying, you know, he greatly appreciates and applauds the initiative put forth by EOS Nation and Attic Lab, but he's worried about the issues that you know, might transpire. So he says, even if the amount isn't that much, because it really isn't that much, it's 20, I believe it's 25, what was it, 2,500, 25,000 EOS per term.
Yeah, I think something like that, yeah.
And so even if someone does, you know, game the system, you're not losing that much. You're not losing the whole pot, right? Yeah. And he's saying that essentially decentralized funding is a new and exciting, and he's supportive of specific projects that explore how such models can compete legacy models. But I believe without sustainability, enforcement, capability, and measurable returns, they have a bad prognosis. Well, he kind of lost me there because I don't really understand why, you know, choice of supporting one project over another comes down to it. In a way, it's going to be a little bit marketing oriented, right? And so if you look at anyone who believes in the space or anyone who believes in any project, different people are going to feel that different projects outweigh the benefits of other projects, right? So I actually like the workable proposal system. I think it's a great idea. I mean, but the big question is like, what block producers are going to value, you know, what incentives. So I think over time, if a lot of these block producers are aligned with one another, they're going to be driving similar projects, right? Like, what if they really like social projects, or what if they really like NFT projects? Then, you know, over time, your kind of focus, and that's one of the biggest focuses we seem to have in the EOS space, is like everyone beyond the EOS space just thinks that EOS is a bunch of gambling dApps, right? So, you know, I think that's a really good, question that you brought up. What projects are going to get funded through this WPS, and how is that going to, align the image of EOS or the usability of EOS or whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I guess again, like you said, right, it depends on the BPs. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the token holder who's voting for the BPs. So I guess in a way, like, it's indirectly the token holders are voting for, these projects to develop. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, the thing I looked to immediately was when this, when the concern was raised is, how's TLOS dealing with it? So TLOS, if you don't know, is a sister chain of EOS. It's built on the same technology, but they launched their own version. They have their own token. They have their own community, and they actually kept the constitution as well as the arbitration system. So they kept a lot of the original designs in EOS white paper, including the funding proposal. And so when I reached out to like Douglas Horn from TLOS, he say, I asked him, do you have any checks in place to prevent corruption or abuse? How do you make sure that people just don't favor one project over the other just because they like it, or just because it will help their financial bottom line? So his answer was like, well, we do. First, TLOS voters are in charge of everything. So I think he's referring to that. At the end of the day, you vote for the block producer, what you vote for, which project gets funded. And he continues to say, right now we are voting on 3 proposals to increase passage threshold, and we're also introducing new types of contracts with milestones and deliverables, sign-offs for pay, and there is language to be covered under undervalued or underdeveloped projects. I'm not sure what the last bit means actually, but yeah, but he's saying like, well, we tried it on TLOS and it works, and so far it does seem like TLOS is putting it to pretty good use as far as I could tell.
Yeah, so I think they're one of the only ones that have been running it on EOS.io thus far, right? And I think Wax has rolled out one as well. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure about the details with the Wax WPS, and I'm wondering, for me, I'm kind of wondering as well, like how this is going to, because Block One does do like VC funding, right?
But in only very specific and only very, I don't understand their choice. Like all of the projects the community is excited about, they're not investing in it.
Yeah, so that was also in this kind of tweet thread. So someone brought it up, and that's maybe part of the problem with just going the VC funding route is like it kind of seems like they haven't funded any of the popular, like you say, any of the popular projects that the community is really excited about, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of interested to see this balance, how the WPS and the VC funding will kind of run in line with each other to see if there's a difference in funding, or are projects going to just apply for both? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think TLOS, again, I don't know overtly much about TLOS, but TLOS, they seem to have a really strong, united community. There's a few blockchains out there within the EOS.io space that have like really tight knit communities of people. I mean, in EOS.io, most people know each other anyway, but within some of these side chains as well, like if you look at TLOS, if you look at Warbly, recently, if you look at Links, they've got these kind of communities that are segregated. Whereas EOS, the mainnet, you've got all of these people from all of these various communities that are kind of coming together into one community, and there seems to be tons of battles on Twitter and issues in Telegram channels and all of this other stuff. So I think I think you hit the nail on the head. I think what happens the first or the second, kind of 30-day window with projects getting funded or projects not getting funded is going to be the really telltale sign of whether this is workable or not, right? So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's good that they burn the tokens and they're not using the inflation, but I mean, if you're still using the funds, because the funds were allocated from the EOS name service and from the Rex fund, right? I believe that's where they're coming from. Yeah, any EOS names or RAM fee, will be allocated towards this as well. So, and they have a accumulated budget of 25,000 EOS every month, apparently. And that's presuming that 25,000 EOS every month actually gets used. So it could potentially last for longer than 12 years.
A bit of money, like honestly, I'm not sure how many projects out there have expense that high monthly. I feel like most projects are pretty scrappy. At least we are. I can't say about other people.
I mean, 25,000 EOS, that's at least $50,000, like even at current prices.
Yeah, that could like, I don't know, give us a year run, right?
Yeah, that will fund our project for about a year, I think.
So, yeah.
So it really depends on what projects they're going to start funding, and we'll see from there.
How do you feel about this idea, by the way, of actually using blockchain to fund a project? It's more a traditional company style of doing things.
I don't know. I'm for it. I'm all for it because we are a blockchain community and project.
Yeah.
I don't see anything negative about it.
Well, it could be gain, right? That's the whole thing. It's like, well,
are you saying like the block producers vote for things that are in their financial interest? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, like the block producers are the ones who hold on to the most tokens.
Yeah.
And if they're also able to vote, then yeah. It's probably in their best interest, like at least short-term wise, to like fund things that are beneficial to them.
Well, I don't know. Like I was gonna say, not if one of them is just an exchange, but that's something I'm getting ahead of myself. We're getting to.
Sorry, not if one of them is what?
An exchange.
Ah.
Yeah. So foreshadowing, as they say in the my old English teacher. So yeah.
Yeah. So, well, and what happens if if they just decide not to vote, on these proposals, right? Because from what I can tell, the way that the voting goes is you can vote, for a project, or you can vote against a project, or you can just abstain voting, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I mean, you bring up a good point about exchanges. Like, what are exchanges actually going to take the time to vote? Like, do they care? I mean, I think there are some decent exchanges out there. I don't want to label all exchanges with the same brush where they're just kind of looking after their own self-interest. But recently, that's another kind of keystone issue that we're having right now as well. Like recently, isn't it Binance is looking to become a block producer, right?
Yeah, so that's another thing we want to talk about, but let's get into it. Yeah, so Binance just came out. Binance always had a block producer on the mainnet, actually. But just last week, they came out say, okay, we're going to start staking our EOS. And they say they're doing that so that they could offer the users on the exchange some EOS reward. So that's what they said. But the problem is that you can't just stake EOS and get the rewards. You have to vote for block producers in order to get the rewards. So, obviously that brings up a big question, like, well, which block producers are you gonna vote for? And what's your criteria? So they haven't said anything about that yet. So far, all their tokens been voting for their own block producer. So I guess that's one way of kind of avoiding that question, because right now, as you may or may not know, each EOS stake token gives you 30 votes. So you could actually vote for 30 block producers, up to 30 block producers. You don't have to vote for all 30, but yeah, that's how it currently works.
So I think that announcement to me was like potentially the worst timing of all time on Binance's part, because you've got all of this stuff that's going down with Steem and Justin Sun.
Yeah, that's I kind of, that's popcorn, material. What's going on in Steem?
Yeah, but it's just kind of like, and then you've got this WPS proposal that's coming out, and then you've got this massive crypto entity. I mean, other than Bitcoin, everybody knows Binance, right? Those are the two things that everybody knows, that are in the space. So to me, it just seems like horrible timing. And that's the thing, right? Like in a small community where everyone knows the, key players that are the block producers, like everyone knows, EOS New York, I mean, probably Attic Lab, Crypto Lions, these other kind of you know, big entities that have been around from almost the beginning, that are very active in the socials, right?
Yeah.
But when you have this massive entity like Binance who's going to walk in, like, I think that's more concerning to me when it comes to things like the WPS than anything. It's like you're having this, you know, big entity that probably has a lot of, you know, pull, because I don't know. I kind of feel like you shouldn't be able to vote for yourself anyway. Like, if you are a block producer, you shouldn't be able to vote for, you know, yourself. I mean, I think if you're in the presidential elections for, you know, to become the next U.S. president, you shouldn't be able to vote for yourself. I mean, you shouldn't.
That's something you can actually do today. I'm not. Yeah, I mean, that's something that's like the U.S. way of doing it, at least.
So, but yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see how it rolls out. I mean, I think, I don't know. So what's your take? Like, do you think it would have been any different if they wouldn't have burned those tokens and they would have used, you know, the inflation fund to be able to pay for WPS? Because it's probably going to be the same issues, right? Who decides on the funding? Where does the funding come from? Like, it kind of seems like the benefit to the EOS Nation proposal for funding the WPS is just that it can be stopped anytime.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, again, I think it's a positive development, to be honest. I just want EOS to do something again, because ever since EOS launch, you know, we've been kind of just betting on something big will happen. I think the first big project was Wikipedia, right? Like, that was like, oh, you know, the co-founder of Wikipedia is on board, and they got all these people, you know, veteran entrepreneurs. So that was a very exciting project. And there hasn't been all that much since then, with the exception of maybe Voice. And I don't know about you, but Voice doesn't make me very excited, to say the very, very least.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean,
yeah.
back to the voting part. I think like a U.S. president, like, you know, voting for themselves is fine because that's only one vote, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like with the block producers, they're carrying a significant amount of the votes. So like them voting for themselves is very impactful.
Yeah.
So if the worker proposal system is designed in such a way where block producers can't vote for themselves, then I think that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I actually recommended that. I think, well, I think I just posted on Discussions. So I don't know how many of you actually saw it, but I think one of the I posted on Reddit. I think I gave two criteria I think would be good. Is one, block producers not block producers. The project cannot have a token. I think that was the first criteria. And the second criteria was, I forgot what the second, what were you talking about, Brian? Sorry, I'm losing my train of thoughts. Right, the block producers having 30 votes.
Yeah, the block producers having like voting for themselves and having like a bunch of votes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a proposal to change it to one token, one vote. I mean, they've been talking about that for a very long time, but never got anywhere. So, anywho, okay, I think we kind of trained this topic enough. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about in terms of, you know, Binance getting on board? So Brendan Bloom actually came out in favor of the move. It's like, well, this is a good development for EOS that Binance was participating. But obviously, you know, with the whole Steem thing, again, I'm not sure. Like Jimmy said, with EOS New York, with EOS Nation, with Adding Labs, like we kind of understand where they're coming from and like what their direction is. With Exchange, you can't know. Yes, they are financially incentivized to make sure the project doesn't fail, because, you know, if the token is trading on their platform, they're likely to have a large portion of it. But at the same time, like, we can't just you know, paying Binance and like, hey, you know, why did you do this thing? They're not likely gonna get back to us. We are just a small portion of their attention.
Yeah, so that I was a little bit shocked. Like, I was wondering if it was a real account at first, to be honest, because it was quite quick that Brendan Blummer came out in favor of Binance. So to me, I was just like, whoa, what's happening, right? Because, you know, like I said, all the news of this Justin Sun-Tron Steem it thing, and then like a couple of days later, boom, it's like, oh yeah, you know, I'm in favor of Binance being a block producer. I was like, whoa, what's going on? What did I miss? You know, what just happened? Like, where is this coming from?
So have you not been following what's been happening on Steem it? Like, have you not been keeping up? You know, Brendan Bloomer. I don't know. I just feel like it just felt like such a disconnect with the community, and the community, you know, like push back. But obviously, there's a lot of people who are who agree with this assessment. You know, EOS Nation, one of the top block producers, actually the #2 block producer right now, you know, came out in agreement. So there are a lot of people who agree with that sentiment. But then there's a huge portion that's like, we don't know. We're not sure this is a good idea. So,
well, I personally think that there should be some way. Like, I'm not a coder, and you know, I'm not necessarily that tech savvy when it comes to this kind of stuff. But there should be some way to allow users to vote with their own funds on exchanges if they want. You know.
Yeah, and CZ of Binance himself came out and said it after the whole Steem thing. He was like, yes, we understand that maybe our users don't want us to vote with their tokens. Like even he agreed with that sentiment. So it was just really, really weird for Brendan to come out and say, good job, you know, even though they haven't really done anything yet for the community.
Or at least give users who are on exchanges the option to, you know, opt out of having their tokens used for votes. Like if you could, you know, check a little box that said, okay, yeah, I don't care if you know, use my tokens to vote, or no, I don't want you to use my tokens to vote. Like, I mean, I know you're not supposed to keep your funds on the exchange anyway, but
yeah.
You know, at least give those people the option. Whether it does anything or not, I don't know. You know, but at the very least, it builds a little bit of goodwill and faith, maybe. You know, so I mean, I don't know, to be honest. Like when, you know, mass adoption happens, how many people will actually vote? I mean, or will care to vote or will want to vote? You know, like
probably not a lot.
There's countries in the world, I mean, that have really low voting rates when it even comes to normal elections, right? And there's countries in the world where they force you to vote. In Australia, essentially, right? Every person has to vote. So,
oh, that's the case. I actually don't
know. But yeah, I don't. It'll be interesting to see how this all kind of ties together, right? But I actually, if we could go back to something that you said before, because I thought that was quite interesting, because I'm not really sure how that would work. So I kind of like you to maybe expand upon that if you could a little bit. But you said that you had mentioned that maybe one of the proposals for the WPS funding would be like, if you don't have a token, then you could you know, put your proposal forth to get or your idea forth to get funded. That confused me a little bit, actually. Like how does that work? Because I'm a little bit strange, but I think that there's a lot of projects in this space that don't necessarily need tokens.
Yeah. So what I was saying when I said that was, if you want to keep the focus on, if you want to keep like politics out of it as much as possible, any project who's asked any proposal asking for funding cannot directly impact the token price of a project, because that creates a really misaligned incentive, in my opinion. Because you will have all these projects submitting proposals, and again, if they are selected based on just favors, or maybe they even promise a block producer some kickbacks, or some, the voters some kickbacks, it just, I don't know. I don't think that's a good way to go about it. But instead, if you say, okay, this is a marketing campaign for EOS, here are the specific details, it's gonna last a month, I think that's fine. I don't think that's controversial. I think everyone agreed that EOS would probably use some marketing, and that's what Dash did with their system. So
yeah, okay, I kind of see what you're saying. So it goes back to what you said earlier, is kind of like, if you're just going to use the funds to buy your token and pump the price and then sell them later, because there's no way to really know that, right? There's no way to really know what. And I think that's like kind of the other thing too, is like, I don't know if I'm right or not, but at least with the VC funding, I think there's some accountability to it. Like there's this idea of some accountability. Like the interesting thing that I thought EOS Nation brought up was that, they were going to start kind of this, they were going to start this, they had this idea, and I think it came from Dash as well, but it's just kind of like, reporting to the community on how the funds were used after they were received, right? So people could see there was some transparency in that. And they even, I think it was on Everything EOS with, I don't know how to say his name, Yves Larose, and Zach, and they were talking about it, and they said, like in the future, it would be awesome if somebody filed for a workable proposal funding to actually build a platform that kept everyone who was getting funded through the WPS accountable. And I thought that's great, actually. Like, you know, you could do that and keep people accountable. But yeah, I don't know, like, how any of this stuff is going to work out, because when it comes to tokens, like, how many tokens do we see that basically have one use case, and, you know, without in my opinion, without a second use case, many times a lot of these tokens are essentially doomed to fail, right? Like, if there's, especially when it comes to, because let's face it, like, one of the beautiful things about blockchain is that you can actually make money without having to go through a third-party system, right? And so if your whole product is based on, you know, your users making money, then I'm not really sure how that works long term. Like, if there's no reason for people to buy your token, then there's always going to be like downward sell pressure, and you're not going to, you know, you're basically starting from behind, you know, because the more people use your product, the more your token is going to be sold, and the more your token is sold, the more the price is going to fall, which it's kind of, I just don't get it. Like, you have to have some other kind of use case behind it to be able to make it, you know, valid. Like, can you imagine if a company in the real world just did that? They said, okay, well, you know, we don't have any use for our company other than just we'll give you money. Eventually the money's going to run out, or the stock price is going to go down so low that you're just not going to be able to be a viable company, right? So yeah, I think I don't know how you would structure that. Like, I like your idea a lot, you know, that you can't just take that EOS and go and buy your own token, but I don't know how you would keep people from not doing that. I think that's a really valid point, actually.
So Brian actually had to leave us, so he's up to something else.
Thanks for the talk, Jimmy. It was very insightful.
Thank you, Brian.
I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to just ponder the what ifs, for sure, you know.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I have to leave now.
No worries, Brian. We kept you long enough. You may go now.
Bye.
See ya.
Later.
So yeah, no, I agree. We, you know, obviously we have our own token. We think our token is valuable, you know, as a platform token. So I'm not gonna go too deep into how it works, but I think it's I don't think Jimmy actually knows, so it's not a bad time to introduce him to the Atmos token. So Jimmy, do you know actually how the Atmos token is works?
Like, very little, to be honest. Like I know I wrote an article on Discusions.app, and someone tipped me like 100 tokens, and I was like, whoa, you guys have a token. Like, I didn't know, and so I looked into it a little bit about that. But yeah, I'd love to hear more about how it works. That'd be awesome, actually.
Yeah, so very briefly, so Atmos is actually a private database token. So obviously we're building Discussions to be a platform for people to be able to express themselves freely, but also, you know, integrate the tokens that's on the EOS blockchain. So how we do that is by tying, so actually there's a small transaction fee. It's very small, 0.01% every time someone makes a tip or it does any kind of financial transaction on Atmos DB, which is the backbone of the Atmos token. So the Atmos token works very much like an exchange token, in that the more activity, financial activities there are on the Atmos DB, the more fees you get in the form of those tokens, and the more Atmos tokens you hold. So that's basically how Atmos token works.
So what I like about it is that it's very peer-to-peer in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like a lot of these other social platforms where you just basically get gifted tokens from the maximum token supply that the company holds.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you say that so where does the fee go?
To the token holders, to the Atmos.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So that's the token holders who are holding it on the platform?
Yeah, on the platform or on your, well, on the platform, because we're using Unify ID.
Okay. Yeah. So that actually makes sense to me. So, you know, by being a holder on the platform, every time someone sends a tip, you get a small part of that, right?
Yeah. So if I send you some tip on Atmos, you get some of that portion of that transaction fee, but also for Boy, for MPT, for PUML, and for BBT, which is the BlockBase token.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you know, I did a deep dive into a bunch of different social platforms on EOS recently. And
Yes.
I'm finished the first part. The first part was a smaller kind of, I feel bad saying this, but smaller Twitter-like platforms, right? Where it's small content form. So
well, you shouldn't feel bad about it. I mean, it's just their format. So
yeah, fair enough. I don't know. There's this idea in blockchain that you're supposed to hate everything beyond blockchain, right?
Sorry.
There's this idea in blockchain that you're supposed to hate everything that came before, right? You can't compare it to Twitter. It's not Twitter. It's token based. Oh wow. Okay, whatever. So yeah, and then yeah. So I'll be writing a secondary part, which will be longer content, longer content, and discussions that will obviously be in there. There's a few other ones, but yeah, I've been playing around with it a little bit, but that's what I like about what I like about Discusions.app, honestly, like without going too deep into it, but what I like about it is that the token is kind of, in a way, it's kind of buried behind the platform. It's not like in your face. Yeah. Which is, I think, quite nice sometimes, to be able to just go on a platform and read some great content and see what people have to say. And then, wow, this article that's here, it's got 500 Atmos that's been tipped to it. Like, it must be a good article, right? Like, you can go in there, you can read it, you can see, what that person had to say about it. You can, interact. I think it's a really good way to incentivize people towards the knowledge of a post rather than just, going in there and clicking like without actually reading it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's one of the reasons why we actually had a model before where the token was actually tied to the votes, but it generates this kind of behavior of just lazy voting. I mean, like, it's lazy commenting, lazy voting, and let's be honest, those contents are not very valuable. So we want to preserve it. Like you said, we want to kind of keep it in back. If it's if you want to, you could do this, but it doesn't. I feel like a lot of these social media platforms, and I shouldn't criticize them before going, you kind of detailing them, but I think in general, from these social media platform, what they do is they build the platform to push the token, which I think the first thing you should do is actually care about how the user will feel when they use the platform. And
and I don't disagree with that, actually, and it really goes back to the same issue with this WPS stuff. Really, if you want to look at it, that's one of the biggest issues, I think, in crypto, right? And it's kind of like you generate this kind of you generate this system where, okay, you voted for me, so I'll vote for you, right?
Yeah.
And you just kind of throw your votes out there in a random nilly-willy thing, and you get a couple extra tokens for making a comment, so you just write nice on everything, and just like, and so, like, I think that's a really, it's not just socials, but I think, like, in the crypto space, social platforms, that's one of the biggest issues that I can see with it, is because you have this kind of groupings of friends, like, that will vote for one another, and
regardless of the content, the actual content.
So I would say, like, from what you're saying, Discusions.app is a little bit, to me, like, it reminds me a little bit of, like, Chirp in a way, because all of the tokens that all of the tokens that other people are getting are tokens that somebody else is giving them away.
Yeah.
So it's a true kind of peer-to-peer. Like, if you want my tokens, you have to write something good enough for me to, give you tokens out of my pocket. Does that make sense?
Let's actually give a brief rundown of what Chirp is for those listening who might not be familiar. Do you want to do that, Jimmy?
Yeah, sure. So Chirp was released on the on the Lynx chain. When the Lynx chain was released, and it's very Twitter-like, and basically it looks and feels a lot like Twitter, except that it's tokenized, and they don't have their own token at this point. Sorry, go ahead.
I thought I heard Kurt actually wants to issue his own token.
Yeah, no, Chirp does not have their own token at the present time. What they have is they have a they use the links token.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that I quite like about it, because it kind of alleviates this, downward sell pressure just, for creating content. There's secondary incentives that, have come from, using the links token. So, and basically, yeah, you just go on there. I think it's maybe, I can't remember exactly, but maybe 90 words or something. You've got a 90 word cap that you can create a post around. You can post links. They have hashtags that you can drop your posts into various places. There's no tokens for commenting. If you want to like something, you transfer a very small amount from your online wallet to another person's account. For every like, you got to sign the transaction. So I think overall they've done a really good job. They're kind of like the new kid on the EOS blockchain when it comes to, small content, social media. I mean, it's a completely different layout and they're on a completely different path, but it's similar to Karma in that sense, where it's just a bunch of people who are, subscribing to various channels and dropping in, you can drop in whatever you want. I mean, you can drop in photos, you can drop in links. It can be blockchain oriented. It doesn't have to be blockchain oriented. I mean, yeah, I would recommend checking it out. I mean,
Chirp is one of my favorite ones that I actually use quite often.
Yeah, I see it on there a lot of times, right? And it's great because I like, you can write an article on Discusions.app, for example, and you can drop the link in there, and then you can draw content towards whatever you've written, and you can't write long content form there, but you can link all of your long content form from any of your other platforms there, which is, I think, a better way to do it sometimes, right? Like, for the same reason I don't like, let's put it this way. If I go on Discusions.app, I don't want to see a bunch of photos of people's food or people's pets or people's, lives. That's not why I'm on Discusions.app, right? That's not why I'm on these other long-term content platforms. So being able to have a platform where you can see anything, really, like, I don't think they're not aiming towards being blockchain agnostic. They're aiming towards, displacing something like Twitter, and working towards, rewarding people for what they have to say, really. So.
Yeah. No.
Do you use any other ones, Jacques, other than Chirp?
Oh, I use most of them. Well, not the one that you covered, but other social media blockchains, just because the other ones you cover, like Karma and Murmur, they just have a very different kind of audience that again, it's going back to that point where, because Karma and Murmur have like this incentive system that rewards you for every like, every comment, it creates a lot of, I think, very low effort comments that doesn't really engage me. So it just doesn't appeal to me using those platforms.
Yeah, I would say, so I like Karma. I don't dislike Karma, but one of my issues with Karma is, in the future, this is supposed to change, but you can't post links on there.
Oh, really?
So they're supposed to be changing this. They're rolling out a desktop version very soon, so they're supposed to be changing it. But that's my one big kind of negative towards Karma, is that you can't post a link on there to longer form content. Like, if I know you can in Discusions.app or some of these other ones, right? But if you couldn't post a link in Discusions.app, it wouldn't be such a big deal because it's a longer content form, so you can say what you want to say. But when you only have a set number of words to be able to express what you want to say, and you want to link content that maybe you wrote on another platform, that's a bit of an issue for me, right? So,
well, I think like you said, like, Chirp is looking to replace Twitter. I think Karma's kind of looking, from what I've seen, I think they kind of pivoted a bit, but they're looking to more target the Instagram group.
Yeah, that's a really good parallel, actually. I think it's really good. So
I feel like they pivoted quite a bit, because I remember it was very much about, doing social good and kind of supporting different, I wouldn't say charity, but along those lines, like humanitarian goals on the platform. Yeah.
But it's interesting to me, like, we went from WPS, to socials, and if you look at it from the broad picture, it's the same issues that are going to be potentially affecting them both, right? Like, what happens when some project comes out on the WPS, right? And they have friends who work for certain block producers, or they've done a really good job marketing towards different block producers. And does it become this system where it's kind of like, okay, well, we'll vote for your proposal of this guy that you like if you vote for our proposal of this guy that we like? Like, it's not. It could potentially, delineate into that as well, right? Like, I mean, my guess is not that many people on Discusions.app just click like on every single post that's posted on there, right?
Well, maybe just me.
No, fair enough, right?
I want
but there isn't, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no incentive to like someone's post just to like it. So and I think that's a really big positive thing, right? Like, but if you have a worker proposal system, for example, and it's kind of like, okay, well, this guy who's involved in this project, you can have these backroom shady deals where it's kind of like, okay, well, I'll vote to get you, 1,000 EOS if you vote to get me.
So, well, we'll see. I mean, I think it's worth a try. I don't know if I could say this with confidence, but I have faith that the token holders will step in, and like, I think EOS Nation is really taking a leadership role here, and I really appreciate that. That I feel like ever since EOS New York kind of got out of the spotlight a little bit, EOS Nation stepped up. And even when EOS New York was, leading the charge, they were also always doing very controversial steps. But I think that as a leader, those are sometimes the steps you need to make. And I think the EOS Nation is definitely doing that with the worker proposal, with actually coming out in support of Binance. I mean, if I have to say, like, my top 21 favorite BP, they would definitely be up there just because how actively engaged they are with the community. And so, yeah, even though I don't agree with everything they're doing, I think they're a great BP at the end of the day. And maybe they see something in their role as a BP that we just don't see. So.
Well, and I think that the nice thing that they seem to be doing is you kind of alluded to this, they seem to be flipping it on its head in a way. I mean, you're kind of incentivizing people to vote for block producers, right? Like, how many people don't vote? A show of hands out there in the audience, right? I mean, there's probably a lot of people that don't vote. You just don't have time, But yeah. So with this, you might be right. Like, it's kind of like it engages the community a lot more. And you're right, they do engage the community quite well. If you go into their Telegram channels or you see some of their interviews on, Giselle Rose is on Everything EOS quite a bit. I mean, they're quite active on Twitter and Telegram, and so that's the thing, right? Maybe this is what EOS needs. Maybe what EOS needs is a way to get people to actually care about voting, and this might actually have the side effect of incentivizing people to actually vote for the projects that they would like to see built on the network, right? I think you also mentioned earlier that, like, that's one of the issues with the Block 1 VC funding, is that a lot of these projects that are being funded by the Block 1 VC aren't really projects that the community seems to be all that interested in. I mean, it might be a good incentive to get people to kind of come back and realize that their vote does make a difference in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful, very optimistic way of looking at it. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think maybe I'm a bit more of a pessimist part, which is funny because we don't design discussions to solely rely on the incentives, right? But at the same time, as someone who's, I guess, whose assumption is that if you don't have an incentive system in place, it won't produce the results that you want. But we already seeing what's happening in Steem, where we have someone who is very strong financially and could boost, like, the Steem token very high if he choose to, yet we see the community reject them completely. And it's not just a plain financial incentive, they're actually working against their own financial incentive. And that's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to bite my tongue on this because I'm actually not a very big fan of Steem, to be honest.
Okay. Of the Steam platform itself, or of their move to freeze the funds on just
well, so yeah, like as you know, I work I'm an editor for Tribe One, right? And one of the reasons I got involved in Tribe One so early was because I tried to use Steem and I just found it way too complicated. I mean, it wasn't a good platform, and at that time, Steem was still doing really well. I mean, the token price was going nuts. It was going through the roof. There was a lot of content on there, but from an onboarding perspective, for me, it just seemed too much of a hassle. It was just a bit of a pain, and then from there. From my perspective, again, it seemed to get a lot worse. It seemed like, if you had the votes of the whales, then you could do well, and if you didn't, then you didn't get the votes. And it's all of this kind of bad stuff that you were alluding to, where it's kind of like a like for a like type of platform or type of system, right?
It's a lot of
sorry,
a lot of favors.
Yeah, and then so I kind of laughed. I'd post things on there every once in a while, but it was more for a content perspective. It wasn't, to be able to get tokens or to make money. And then it just kind of seemed like people were starting to, lose faith. A lot of longtime community members, they always had gripes about what do you call them on Steam? Are they the delegates? The community? Yeah. So they kind of had issues with that, but it kind of seemed like it was going okay. I didn't think it was going to die. And then kind of this quote unquote hostile takeover by Justin Sun, that kind of rallied everyone back behind those delegates again. But from my perspective, a lot of those people who rallied probably came back and rallied. They're just, maybe they were fed up with the delegates, but they see that maybe the delegates have their own self-interest in the self-interest of the old Steem platform, as opposed to what someone who doesn't really understand the platform and just is using it as an acquisition, right? I mean, let's face it. I mean, the same thing could potentially happen with Binance, and I like Binance. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not putting Binance into a bad boat, but when you've got a platform that's as big as Binance and people who are involved in crypto on so many different levels, that when they're walking into EOS, how much dedication are they actually going to put into improving the ecosystem, right? It's not like someone like EOS Nation or EOS New York, that their whole world is based around improving the ecosystem,
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. That's my concern as well. Like, Binance is so big that they could afford to lose EOS, in my opinion. It would hurt them, but it wouldn't destroy them. Whereas you have EOS New York, EOS Nation. If EOS goes down, that would destroy them. It's a completely kind of skin in the game kind of thing. So I'd much rather have, like, we vote for new decks, and it might sound a little bit hypocritical at first, because like we don't want Binance, but how come we're voting for new decks? Because at least new decks' whole business model is based on EOS and EOS related blockchains. So if EOS, something bad happens to EOS, they're going down with the boat. So there's no life raft for them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well, right? Like, they were born out of EOS. I mean, of course, they're a business, but their incentivization doesn't come from making money. It comes from being the first decentralized exchange on EOS. So it's in their best interest to see EOS succeed, right?
So I just realized I think we should start wrap up, but I did realize that we didn't bring up Murmur. Do you want to get into that a little bit as well?
Yeah, sure. We can chat about Murmur a little bit. Murmur was probably one of the first social platforms I joined, and I'm not that active on it. I mean, I post a lot of links from a lot of articles that I write on it, and I quite liked it. I mean, it was quite easy to set up a profile and go on there and get involved. And the thing I liked about Murmur was, I would post a link on Murmur, and then I would check my account, my EOS Flare account, and there would be some Murmur tokens in my account. So it was kind of nice in that way. The problem with Murmur right now is probably not 100% sure why, but it seems like they're kind of dragging their heels a little bit to move over to the Telos blockchain. So the community doesn't seem like they're being very active. Nothing really seems to be happening. And we don't really know how this whole kind of move to Telos is going to play out. It could play out really well because Telos has a really big community, like you mentioned before, right? So I don't know if the platform's going to look the same, if they're doing a complete overhaul, if it's going to be an easy process, like when Karma moved over to Wax. I mean, everything was pretty much automated. It was done for you. The next day you opened up your account, you had a Wax account. So I think, they're not a bad platform, but in the next month or 2 or 3 weeks, I'm not sure how long they're going to take to get this, rolled up and back up and running again. So that's really all I have to say about Murmur, really.
I think they might start picking up a bit more steam, just because I heard news that India has legalized or unbanned cryptocurrency. So obviously, I don't know how much of effect that actually has on the product and the platform, but I think that should at least entice a few more people to join the platform and earn some cryptocurrency from India.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, that's going to be huge, to be honest, because there does seem to be a lot of people that like the Telos blockchain aren't necessarily in the developed world, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to put Telos down, but Telos seems to have this really kind of strong community of developing nations, it seems to me. Right?
Like Venezuela, Philippines?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know why they like it. I'm guessing it probably has more to do with the fact that, if you want to have an EOS account, like I like EOS a lot, but if you want to have a main net account, especially after this whole EDOS thing, it's really complicated to have that much, EOS staked. And I mean, we just took a big dump in the token price, but if you think about it, like a year ago, I mean, you're looking at 500 yen maybe for, 400, sorry, I'm backwards, maybe about $4, right? About $4 US for one EOS. And if you have to have, 30 EOS stake just to use your account, it's not doable by a lot of people in a lot of countries in the world,
Yeah, no, I agree. The EOS has a lot of issues that it needs to solve, for sure, in terms of onboarding. Like, not even, I shouldn't get too deep into it, but, like, this is right in the territory of things that I think about all day. So just indulge me a little bit. But the whole EOS system is set up so backwards. It's almost impossible to get an EOS account unless you already have an EOS account. It's impossible to stake for more EOS unless you already have stake EOS. You can't, I don't know, you can't even, like, for Rex, the system is so complicated. You have to deposit your EOS and you have to trade it for Rex tokens, and you purchase the Rex tokens, purchase CPU with the Rex tokens. The whole thing is, for a normal user, like, this is like a week of study and learning how to use the system. It's insane. So
I don't disagree with that at all. I think once you're in, once you've figured it out, once you've taken that time to sit down and figure it out, it's really easy to use. It's much better, in my opinion, than having to, sign in to your, my Ethereum wallet and send a transaction through a bunch of numbers. But you are right. I mean, to get yourself set up and to get yourself into the EOS system, it's just not really that easy. I mean, and I think that's one thing that Lynx actually did really well. You said you used Chirp, so you must have signed up for a Lynx account, but that has to be the easiest sign-up process I've ever went through anywhere in crypto. I mean, it was so easy to get in there and sign up. It takes 2 minutes, and the interface for the Lynx wallet is just, something that anyone who's signed up for a Facebook account can understand. They can be there and be doing it right away.
The one strength of that ecosystem is their UI UX, and like the Lynx wallet has always been one of my favorite wallets. Like, it was my go-to iPhone app to interact with every kind of EOS applications. So I do give them a lot of credit for that UI UX. But in terms of onboarding, you have to give your phone number. I don't know how I feel about that. So did you have to give your phone number, by the way? Or was it just?
Yeah, I did as well. Yeah, and I'm not in North America. So yeah, I had to give my phone number. And I think, well, yeah, we were chatting offline a little bit about voice, I believe,
Oh boy. You gotta open that kind of warm.
Yeah, so I was I was writing an article the other day, and one of the guys from the platform that manages the platform, he sent himself an introduction to me, and he said, "Oh, it's nice to meet you. I'm sorry I've been busy. Like, you asked me a question, and I'm going to introduce yourself. Here's my name. Here's where I'm from," type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And I found myself saying, because I go by Jimmy D, right? I don't put my real name on it. And he said, I said, "Oh yeah, I'm Jimmy D, and I'm presently living in Japan." And he said, "Oh, okay, so I guess you won't be signing up for Voice anytime soon, right?" And I kind of had to check myself, and I kind of thought, well, actually, if I can, I'll probably sign up for Voice. I don't have a big problem with it, but we live in this space where we don't like to give our personal information away, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and there are platforms. The Discusions.app is one. I think Karma is another one, where you don't have to give any personal information away, right? But that's like, what's your take on that? I mean, is a phone number better than uploading your driver's license? I mean, how many exchanges did so many people, when they first got into cryptocurrency, take the selfie photo with them standing beside their driver's license and the date written on a piece of paper, right? I mean, I don't know. Like, for me, a phone number, yeah, I'm not so worried about a phone number. I mean, my driver's license,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, really. Like,
so for me, like, obviously I had no problem giving away my phone number as well as my driver's license, because I actually did try to sign up for Voice. So I definitely do think that there are spaces for those platforms. And as you say, like, if you want anonymity, you could go to Discussion. That's what we designed a platform for. And if you do buy into that Voice model of their vision of what they're trying to build, which is no bots, just humans, real human interactions, then yeah, I could see the value, and I could see why someone would give up their driver's license, which is not a lot of detail, to be honest, to be fair. So.
But that's the thing, like, so one of the things with Discusions.app, right, is it's pretty easy to get going on Discusions.app. I mean, you log into your account, you write a post, and you're done. But the problem is, and I think you know this, it's not intended to be an offense, but the problem is it only really works if you already have an EOS account, right? Like, if you're familiar with the back end of EOS, then no problem. It's a super simple interface, right? And I think that's what a lot of these projects in EOS face is, like, enabling people to be able to onboard, into their system. So
Wait, I think maybe I misheard you, but you don't need an EOS account to use Discussions.
I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Why do I think that?
That's the.
No, you're right. No, sorry, I was confused. Sorry, I had it confused. I was thinking, there's another platform that you do need to use an EOS account.
Well, we did require EOS accounts during our first iteration, so maybe that's where the confusion came from.
Yeah, you're right, because the wallet's it's built right into the platform, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sorry. No, you didn't misheard me. That's my bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But yeah, I think we should start wrapping things up. I kept you here way longer than I promised before, so I want to thank you for your patience for putting up and with me and my long-winded podcast.
No, actually, to be honest, I quite enjoyed it, and I was actually going to apologize to you because I tend to get a little bit off topic. I've got so many things going on inside my head, so I kind of felt like I was the one that was rambling on, to be honest. So.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I do that too. So you're not alone. You're not alone. And I think it's always good to, even though we have like a meeting, like a show agenda, I don't think it's necessary to stick to the script. Obviously, all these things are kind of connected, with regards to EOS Nation and then Binance coming into the picture, and how that whole thing affects the EOS ecosystem, and what should the EOS ecosystem should be. Should it be about social applications? Should it be about decentralized finance? And all these other things are kind of all jumbled together to make this big, beautiful mess that we call EOS. So.
Yeah, well, it's my first time to ever even hear your podcast, so.
Oh, really?
I do apologize for that. So, yeah, well, actually, I'm not really sure where you are, but I'm on the other side of the world, so I'm in East Asia.
Okay.
So, trying to time, certain things becomes a little bit problematic when you're on the other side of the world, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, but yeah, I really did enjoy it, and I could probably talk to you all day. So don't apologize for being long-winded. It's stuff that I'm kind of interested in. But
awesome. I'm gonna take that as a you're coming back soon in the future.
Yeah, that would be awesome. You know, like I said, the second part of the article, I'll be featuring Discusions.app and a few other longer content forms. So it'd be great to come on and talk about that or anything else any other time, you know. That was quite a pleasure.
That is perfect. So with that, I am gonna wrap this up with a quote. This is a new thing we're doing. So Discussions is very much about free speech and, you know, just expressing your opinion and kind of, but at the same time, I think free speech is a pretty controversial topic in its own right at the moment, like everything else. So what we do is we end every podcast with a famous quote about free speech by a famous person. And we'd like to hear your feedback on it. If you agree with the quote, disagree with the quote, whatever it might be. And this week's quote is by Oscar Wilde, and it is, "I do not agree what you have to say, but I will defend to the death for your right to say it." And with that, we're going to close out the show. Thanks again, Jimmy, for coming on, and I look forward to having you again in the future.
And thank you.